Hey guys, it's Heather from Here She Grows, and today I'm thinking about trees. It's late winter, we're a couple weeks away from spring, yay. It's a beautiful day, it's going to be almost 70 degrees today, and I wanted to get some of these trees limbed up before it gets too warm and spring's here. So late winter, early spring is a great time to limb up trees. Now I'm not talking pruning trees, I'm talking limbing them up, and limbing up a tree has been extremely useful in my garden because I garden in a very small space. So limbing up simply means that I am raising the tree canopy. So it's really nice for clump forming trees too. And as you can see here, I'm standing between two of my pussy willow trees as well as a river birch tree. All of them have been limbed up over the years. So they've been in place for about 12 years. And they were planted in this area because back in the day when this was a brand new garden and I was just getting started, this was the wettest part of my garden. We're on a sloped piece of land here, and all of the neighbors' yards kind of drain back here. So this stayed wet for a very long time after rain, and so I planted trees specifically to solve problems, and shrubs in the case of the pussy willow. But I planted them to solve a water issue that we had, and now I would consider this garden a dry shade garden. The pussy willow tree wants to be at least 15 feet wide. If I planted that and allowed for 15-foot spread, it would just eat up my entire yard, and I wanted to be able to garden underneath these trees. So that would mean limbing up. So limbing up is just taking off the lower branches gradually so that you can move and garden if that's what you want to do, or if you need to be able to mow beneath a tree or a shrub. You're raising the canopy and eliminating those lower branches so that you can do those things. And that's what's worked here for me in my very small backyard. So I was going to share those things with you today and also go over some of the tools you might need. And maybe you already have some on hand, but you don't need much, and you just need to know how to prune properly so you're not damaging your trees and shrubs. So this is my dry shade garden back here, and believe it or not, these pussy willow trees were only about maybe 30 inches tall when I put them in 12 years ago. And now they are massive. So they're probably every bit of 15 feet, if not taller. And I've gradually over the years limbed them up. So you see it, they've got this beautiful, they're almost sculptural. I love these trees for that reason. And I also planted them not only for water management, but they were also a wonderful, they attract the bees in the springtime. They're one of the earliest things that pop in my garden, and the catkins on the pussy willow trees are a magnet for the honeybees. So I've got that, as well as the privacy that this canopy offers me. But to be able to garden beneath it, I had to limb them up, and I've done it over 12 years. And I don't really have to do any limbing up now because they're the size I need them to be, and we can pass beneath it with the lawnmower, and I can garden freely without any branches getting in my way. And that's how I've accomplished this look back here. And it's taken several years, and it's not something you want to, cut away at your tree all at once, because you're definitely going to send it into shock if you do something like that. But it's a great way to take advantage of the space beneath trees, especially if you're in a small space like I am. So let me show you what I use here. Your three things: pruners. Especially with the littler trees, hand pruners. I have a pair of Felco number 2s here. I use these most often because the younger trees, you really don't need the really big heavy-duty loppers or the saws just yet. The branches are pretty small. Larger branches, a pair of loppers. And a handsaw works really well too. I use the handsaw on a crabapple tree. I've got a prairie fire crab that's a clump form out in front, and the branches were crossing, and they were really big trunks, and they were rubbing each other. So I used this to remove an entire limb because I didn't want to introduce any disease into the tree because the trunks were rubbing together. So handsaw is good for that. But for the most part, it's going to be a pruner and maybe even a lopper if the branches are bigger. So let me show you what a good cut on a tree looks like. And that all comes down to being able to identify the branch color on whatever tree you're going to limb up. Branch color is extremely important. Every tree has branch colors. So if it's got a branch, it's got a branch color on it, and that's what you want to identify. So let me show you what that looks like. So what you're looking at is my tricolor beech, and I'm not going to touch this tree, but I just want to show you it's a very good example of what a branch color looks like here. So your branch color will be raised up. It's along the trunk, and where the branch meets the trunk, there's this raised portion here. It's like a ring that goes around the entire branch. You're not going to want to cut into that. You want to cut in front of that. So I'm going to make my cut here. I'm not going to cut down because I don't want it to be a flush cut with the trunk, because that will never heal over. If you cut in front of the branch collar, however, it will heal over. It'll scab over and it'll look just fine. You won't damage the trunk. If you do cut flush with the trunk, you'll never heal, and then you end up, it becomes a vector for disease and insects. So you want to cut in front of the branch collar. So let me show you what a good cut looks like. Back to the pussy willow tree here. So I made this cut a long time ago, but you can see I cut here in front. See how the trunk is here and this branch collar is raised up away from the trunk. So I cut in front of the branch collar, and now what's happening, it's healing over. So it's scabbing over. It's just healing the wound. And that's what, when you cut it right, that's what will end up happening. You will not have permanent damage to your trunk that way. And wintertime, late winter is a great time to do it because the tree is dormant, or the shrub is dormant. You have less chance of insects getting in there or disease or anything like that. So cutting now is a good time. And this is strictly just limbing up. It's not pruning. So here's another example of a multi-stem tree. It's a clump forming tree. It's a prairie fire crab. Put it in maybe about 10 years ago. And when it went in, it looked like a large shrub, maybe about 5 to 6 feet tall. And it's, since I'm such a bad height guesser, but I'd say it's probably every bit of maybe 17, 18 feet now. But it had limbs that went all the way to the ground. It looked like a shrub. And I've limbed it up every year a little bit more until I finally get it to the height that I need it to be so that we can pass beneath it and I can still garden underneath it. And this bed is full of Geranium macrorhizum as well as hosta. So I'm able to garden and still have this beautiful tree that flowers in the springtime, and it looks gorgeous in my garden. I absolutely love it, and it's because of the shape. And if you throw in a solar light, spotlight beneath these trees, especially when they have such a beautiful sculptural form like multi-stem trees do when you limb them up, it is a beautiful effect in the garden, and it's something that's perfect for a very small space garden. You can do more work in them, you can add more plants, and who doesn't want to add more plants? So you can see here, this area is in the process of healing over, and that only happens because I've cut in front of the branch collar. So it'll scab over and completely close up, and there's no damage to this tree that way. And here's another one here, and this one's almost completely closed, and this is toward the base of the tree. This is probably one of the earliest cuts I made. So the tree that I'm going to work on today, and it doesn't need much limbing up aside from this one branch here, it's just coming out into the grass. It gets in the way. It's pretty low on the tree. These are Beijing Gold tree lilacs. They're from the Chicagoland Grows collection. I have 2 of them, but this is the one I'm going to take care of today. And this is the only branch I'm going to need to take out, and I've identified the tree collar. I'm going to cut a little bit in front of it, maybe about a ½ inch or so, if not maybe even an inch. I definitely want to avoid, like I said before, cutting into the bark at all because it won't heal. So first things first, before you do any cuts, you want to make sure you're disinfecting your pruner, your lopper, or saw, whatever you're using to do this. You can use bleach wipes, that comes in handy. The best thing to use is rubbing alcohol. You can clean off your equipment using that, and that way you're not transmitting any kind of bacteria or disease that might be on your pruners into your beautiful trees. And I'm simply just going to make my cut. It's a small limb. I'm going to come a little bit in front of it. Done. Really simple. And now that'll heal over and it'll be like nothing happened, and now my husband can mow without complaining that my trees are getting in his way.